Thank you everyone for being with us, the Corkin gang. And I'm Sarah Milroy. I'm the Chief Curator at McMichael. And I'm delighted to be here sharing cyberspace with the wonderful Gina Rorai, who's a painter that I have admired for my whole career. Yes, I knew you way back when. I think, when did you first get out of art school? Because it must have been around then that I first saw your paintings.
Yeah, it was close because I probably got out of art school in 89, 90. And then I started showing at Savo Castelli probably around 95, 96. So
Yeah.
not long after.
Yeah, so we go back.
We go back a long time. Yeah, yeah.
And
yeah.
It's getting way, way back. Anyway, we won't think about that.
Very.
It is a little bit. But of course, you just keep getting better. And
Thank you.
yeah, this show of yours that's up right now is just so extraordinary. And I wanted to just, in case some of our listeners don't know about this trajectory of yours, just find out from you, like, where did you grow up and how did you get interested in art?
Okay, that's a big question. So I grew up in Toronto.
Yeah.
I grew up in North York. And I remember there's two things that happened to me when I was very young. I think I was in grade 2.
Yeah.
And I was in the school library and I saw a book on Emily Carr. And I thought, I can be an artist. Women can be artists. So she was the first female artist I had ever remember getting a book out on the library on.
Wow.
And then another thing happened. My mother, probably around that same time, she showed me from a book a painting of Degas, ballerinas, and asked me if I wanted to take ballet lessons. And I said no. And I took the book and I crossed out Degas' name and I signed my name because I thought, I want to make a painting like that. I don't want to dance.
Yeah, ballerina, not so much. Yeah, exactly.
No, and I remember those two things very young, probably grade 2 and 3, you know, so I was, and thinking, I don't know why, but somehow I had identified with being a painter from a young age. And then of course, my parents were very encouraging and they could see that I love drawing and they put me in art classes at a young age at the local library. I did paintings and paper mache and all that stuff. And also they took me to art gallery, like the McMichael gallery at a very young age. I remember going in the 70s in a station wagon with my parents and seeing all those great painters and actually seeing Emily Carr for the first time, a live painting in flesh. And so those were probably my first in my first introduction. And I don't know, it had a lasting effect for sure. Especially having those facilities like the museums, like the AGO, like McMichael, having those to be able to go see at a young age, to see, painting is a viable option for me.
And then you made the decision to go to art school. Where did you go to art school?
Well, actually, I went into York University in the 80s, and I was an English major. And I thought that at that point, I was thinking that I couldn't be an artist because I'm not good enough to be an artist. To go to university, you have to be really quite accomplished. So I didn't have the confidence to go directly into an art program. So what I did is I started in English for 2 years, and then I decided I need to take an art class. So I took one at York on the side, and I loved it so much. By my second year, I said, I'm doing this. I want to major in painting, drawing, and I'm going to switch over. So what I did was I went and I had to bring a portfolio in. And I brought a portfolio in, and it was Ted Beeler he was interviewing me for the art school, and he offered me, based on my portfolio, offered me a scholarship. So, and then of course I realized years later, that he was the son of Andre Beeler, whose paintings I love and admire. And I also love Ted Beeler's work. But anyway, so that was my first. So then I started at York, and I had some great teachers.
And who were some of the most influential people?
I'm trying to think now. It would be John Wilkinson, who was, he recognized a lot of the people that I needed to look at when I was, 19 and painting and not really aware of the history probably as much as I should. So he introduced me to a lot of the English painters, like Auerbach, Kossoff, Sickert,
that makes sense.
So many English painters. So he would always say, go look at these painters. So then I would go home and look at them. And then the next day I'd bring in, 3 or 4 paintings, copying those artists, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was a big influence. And then I also had Michael Fernandez.
Oh, yes.
Who was the most wonderful, amazing, crazy teacher that anybody could have. He would do things like come into class, he'd set up a still life. This is probably for drawing in second year. And then he'd say, anybody who doesn't know what to do, follow me. So then I would just get to work and just start drawing. And then probably more than half the class would go out with him for a walk. And then they'd come back and I would say an hour later and I'd say, what did you guys do? And they said, we just went for a walk around the campus and looked at trees. And, so he was one of those teachers that he taught you about things that were really hard to teach, about, self-motivation, about just looking at your environment, so he was just a really interesting guy.
and really seeing things your own way and
seeing things your own way. And because in some ways art school is just it's just a springboard, because the real work happens once you graduate. You have to get to work and you have to really do the research on your own. So they were teaching us these things, at a young age, and you had to pick up the mantle and you had to sort of carry on and do your own work, right? And that's what they were teaching us.
Yeah. And that
when I look back,
that's so difficult from being a student to being out, on your own. But I remember those early paintings, seeing them so assured, and the sense, looking at them, and I still, have that sense today. And we can talk about this, but of a painter who has a lot of the history of art in her mind and is really mining a kind of rich tradition. But you can always, you could look at a Gina Rorei painting made this year and a Gina Rorei painting made then, and it still is the same sort of rapture about color. It still has the same like lovely, scruffy, sort of sensuous laying on of paint, It still has the same unabashed, love of decoration. There are certain constituent elements of your work that are so consistent from the beginning through to today. And I guess maybe we should start talking about one of the works in particular that's in your current show at Corcoran.
Yeah.
That's Above the Garden, which is a work, a painting of, I presume it to be cherry blossom trees. Yeah. Which is something, as a person who grew up in Vancouver, it's a subject matter that I'm just a goner for. And right. This work just has this heavenly sense of buoyancy and energy. And when you say that you were, influenced by Carr, it's really striking to me when I look at this picture, because there is this sense of these trees are just kind of like breathing and full of light.
She was the first painter that I would see, those paintings with the tall trees, one tree reaching out to the sky and then the sky vibrating around the trees.
Exactly. Like Soren Kierkegaard, Beloved of the Sky is the most famous.
Yeah, so for sure. And that painting, I feel like almost I'm really a thief. I'm always stealing from all kinds of artists. And this particular painting is actually pretty much directly related to a Van Dongen painting.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought to myself, at my age and at this moment in time, there's things I still need to address, you know, and one of them is to copy paintings. I still need to be able to copy paintings and to use them and, you know, in my work in order to get to the place I need to get to, which is next, right? So I don't know what that is, but this painting was a one-off painting in terms of it happened very fast. I probably did it within a couple hours, and it's very direct and it's very thinly painted, and like his work, very thinly painted. Something that I've always wanted to be able to do.
Tell me a little bit about your connection to Van Dongen.
Well, it's more, it's looking at the landscape, color, the way that he could put washes of color together, and they were surprising, you know, surprising mixes of color. And, you know, it was something that one of the things I needed to try to do in this show. And, you know, so I had seen this painting and it was so direct and honest. And I thought that's something I need to do more of. So
I was thinking the other artist that was very fond of Van Dongen, why I'm asking, is Greg Curnow. And I'm wondering, you know, Curnow is the other kind of chromophile in Canadian art that, you know, it was a real master of color. And was he important to you as well?
Yeah, I had seen Greg Curnow give a lecture at Windsor University when I was there. After I graduated at York, I did printmaking at Windsor University, just not in any program, but just in order to continue studying things and learning about layering of color. Probably printmaking was one of the influential and great ways to do that. But he came and gave a talk at Windsor University at that time, and you know, so he's definitely another influence looking at his work, and the flatness, the way washes and flatness of color, you know, blend, and edges and line quality and all those things. So he was definitely another one. Another one that was really instrumental was, John Wilkinson was a big influence as a teacher. And then he invited us to Patterson-Ewan talk. And so basically there was maybe 12 of us, and we had lunch with Patterson-Ewan after he gave a talk. And I remember being at York at the time as a landscape and still life painter, was not really popular. 85 to 89 it was not. It was, you know, it was a good experience because I had to defend why I was making my paintings. But when I graduated from there, I thought I don't think I can be a painter because there's no room for me in what I'm interested in doing. But then I went to this Patterson-Ewan talk, and the first thing he said was, he was sitting on a hill in Montreal when he first started painting, and he was making a landscape painting, and someone came up to him and said, "You're a painter?" And he said, "No, I'm not." You know, so that kind of real, when he gave this talk and he spoke about all these things, he was studying geology, but then he realized he didn't want to do the science. He wanted to just do the drawings and the paintings of rocks, you know? So to hear an artist talk really honestly and humbly and so beautifully, I thought that's the kind of artist I want to be. I could see myself being an artist like Patterson-Ewan, right? Oh, that's the direction I want to go into. So he was probably, in terms of going to see artists and influence in terms of color, and, you know, he's another one. So he's also
like hugely ambitious in terms of the scale and the kind of force of his work, but as a human being, so extraordinarily humble.
So extraordinary,
you know,
kind and humble and sweet. And so that was inspiring, you know, because as an artist, I think you have to find a place where you can see yourself making a contribution, you know, and I felt that I could, you know, hopefully make some kind of contribution like he did, you know, like that's an avenue that I could pursue, right? So that was another influence.
So Above the Garden, is the title taken from Van Dongen? Or is this
the what?
the title taken from Van Dongen, or is this your?
No.
So why above the garden?
I just, it struck me as being a kind of a window view of looking down through
Yeah.
trees to a landscape. And, one of the things I've always I remember as a child, is I had a weeping willow tree outside the back of my house, and I spent so much time looking through my bedroom window at the weeping willow tree. And this sort of reminded me that the memory of looking through the trees to the landscape, right? So
how so many of us we had a weeping willow tree at my house I grew up at in
yeah.
Vancouver as well, and we also had a huge cedar tree that used to fill with starlings every night, and we would go out and clap our hands, and it'd be this black explosion of starlings.
Wow.
But we all have these intense relationship with trees, but often a relationship with a specific tree might last for a whole lifetime, thinking about it, or even if you're lucky enough to still be living where you grew up.
Oh yeah. Watching.
Those could be important relationships.
I was lucky enough to. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have that experience too, where the ever-changing, seasons, and living here, and being a part of watching a tree, trying to paint it while it's changing moment by moment, day by day, week by week.
Well, this is an extraordinary painting. I love it so much. It's just so full of energy and so vibrant.
Well, it's definitely.
It looks like waves of energy coming off the ground. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely just a painting about being very direct and very quick, and almost like a memory. It's like having a memory. Like I just remember a painting like this that he did. And so I thought, I'm going to try to do it from memory, just quite quick, in between doing, other paintings that were more labor intensive, right? So it's just in a way of exercising, your the crazy.
As a piano player or something.
Yeah. Right. So that's what this painting actually was. And then I remember, my husband came into the studio and he said, just leave that one, so because I was probably going to paint on top of it. And I was just leaving it for the day, and then I realized I need to look at that and learn, maybe think about it a little bit more and learn from it. So
great success. I wanted to look at another work that's in the show, Retreating Light, or Four Cornered Shade, which is another kind of, I think I'm right in saying it's a landscape, but it's also, it could be it could be something you're remembering. It's very indeterminate if those are trees or clouds, or of course the color in this picture, like above the garden, the color is ravishing, but it's like amped up into these peacock blues and gorgeous fuchsias and purples and golds. Where did this painting start out? And it's a big picture too. It's really quite the monumental thing. How did you start out with this picture? Where did it come from?
Well, normally, most of my paintings start off as strokes on the ground, brush strokes on the ground. So I remember with this one, I started with some oranges and yellows and just had to find the painting out of those strokes, And obviously this painting is hugely influenced by Matisse, and his landscapes. And I was probably looking at Garden at Luxembourg and those kinds of paintings. And, Matisse's sense of color as well. And again, looking at the flatness, like the Van Dongen painting, and trying to do these broader, maybe strokes of color. And so that's, and I do think it does come from, again, it has it has my vocabulary. I'm trying to discover my own language, and it has my still life in it. It has my, landscape. It has probably abstraction in it, in a sense, because if because of the size of it, if you go up close, you can see the brush strokes, and you can see areas that are left quite, quite bare.
Yes.
So
I was really interested in, you talk about still life, and I think what you're referring to is this little cluster of kind of accumulated marks in the middle, which is a hallmark, like right from the get-go with you. These little still lives that are kind of disintegrating in a beautiful way, and they're also just like extraordinarily pleasurable to take in terms of the touch in them and the sort of density of touch. I found myself sometimes thinking about Guston when I look at that part of your painting, and I'm wondering, and thinking particularly about Guston's kind of carefully tended coarseness.
Piles.
Yeah. His kind of the kind of coarseness that he brings, a kind of rough touch that's very warm and human. And I'm wondering about you and Guston. You have
Guston was, in terms of, I mean, who painted pink better than Guston?
Not a soul.
And the fearlessness of Guston, making those incredible paintings at a time when no one understood them or really wanted to show them, or So, but yeah, the piles, the looking around and doing what's in front of you and trying to just be honest about that. And I feel like Guston was a huge influence. I mean, it's, it's hard for me to say. I mean, it's hard for me to verbalize these things that are just, impossible to talk about. Like how much you love another artist.
That's why you make paintings about these paintings, write about them,
Yeah, I guess so.
Some things language can't do,
Yeah, that's true.
Tell me about these wonderful, extraordinary blooms of color that are happening at the sides of this painting, particularly this right-hand element.
When you say blue, again, I'm thinking, Guston with his pink, and then Tiepolo's blues, right? Like how can you do a better painting than that? At some level, I'm really, I struggle, because people say to me, you're known for your color, but I feel like I'm really just an imposter in a lot of ways, because when you look at the greats like Matisse and like Tiepolo and like Guston, I don't know how you can make color any better than that, right? So
kind of like saying, there's no more poems to write because all the words have been used.
I know. But it's hard not to have that feeling as a painter. No, I know. I mean, obviously, I'm just gonna fight through it and do it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, so the blues, I don't think I'm close to that, but I think about those, right? Tiepolo's blues, right? And how can I get that into my work, right? So
yeah, I was having Tiepolo's other great color is that kind of Bellini orange.
Bellini orange. Yeah.
I was thinking about it the other night, a lowly Toronto skyline, but there's like 20 minutes at the end of every
golden light,
when Toronto was truly beautiful. Something to do with the lake light, and usually the sun breaks from the west at that time underneath whatever cloud cover is in the city. And it's like ravishing. But so, I mean, I'm sure as a painter you live for those moments of when you're living in the city. And
but as much as I look at those moments, I also look at paintings and other paintings. I mean, I'm probably the least normal landscape painter you'll ever find, because my landscape is not through going out and sitting in the landscape, and it's through looking at it from sitting through a window or through an interior or through works of art. And
works of art,
like I'm a huge Corot fan, and his landscapes are incredible, and also his figurative work is incredible and very inspiring to me. So it's through kind of a combination of all those things, right? which is
But you're
a
not a,
very crazy way to paint a landscape because it doesn't make any sense. But
you're not, it's not plein air is not your thing.
it's not plein air, and it's, you know, and it's memory too, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's all that combined. So I don't think,
Memory, yes.
so I think about when I'm walking through one of my paintings, um, they don't really make sense. They're not really often. Maybe this one is probably more of a direct landscape, but if you go to my,
Be and to become.
yes, to be and to
Yeah.
become, there's a lot of areas where it's not necessarily about sitting and looking at the landscape, but it's about when you're walking through a landscape, how you perceive it, right? You're looking around constantly, and you can see one image up close, and then you can look far and see another. So it's kind of that nonsensical way of looking, being in a landscape. So I think that, you know, there's areas where horizons don't line up, and clouds come down from the sky to the ground, because when you're walking through and looking and turning your head, that's how the experience feels to me. Right? It's not definite. It's not like a definite horizon all the time. It's constantly moving and shifting. So
you were talking about memory a minute ago, and just as we prepared to talk today, we were touching on when I look at To Be and to Become, I think about Franklin Carmichael's
definitely
extraordinary landscapes that we have in our collection at McMichael, where you were mentioning that you came as a child. Would it be possible that Carmichael is a memory for you here? And how do you account for this magnificent sort of shimmering, crazy thing that's happening in the middle, that's falling down out of the heavens?
Well, for sure, the Carmichael paintings are there deep in my, you know, memory, because as a child I would go. So even if it's not necessarily a direct influence, it's in my DNA. Like I grew up looking at that work. So you know, Lauren Harris Mountains, and and Doris Mills, her mountains. I mean, I felt like I had to kind of acknowledge those influence by trying to make a painting that maybe it would, you know, is similar or influenced or directly related to them. So I have to kind of wear those influences on my sleeve and, you know, paint through them, right? So definitely as a child, you know, going to the McMichael, those things seep into you even unconsciously, you know.
And we've been talking a lot about you know, the landscape-based works that are in this show, but of course the exhibition also has a lot of pure abstracts, sometimes with their smaller works, and sometimes with some kind of elements that might suggest like a flower or some organic. I'm just looking here at one, if I just advance one or two, let me just see. The hawthorn tree, or ascending number 2.
Ascending number 2.
You know, tell us a little bit about when you actually go completely off the grid. Is there a strong difference for you between making a picture that has these hooks into the representational realm versus making an abstraction, or is it just?
I mean, I feel for me, abstraction always is tethered to the real world. It's never separated from it. So it comes from, you know, looking. And I feel like there really never is, like if you look at Velasquez, for instance, and you go up close, or to one of the brush strokes, how can a brush stroke be a flower and also abstract at the same time, right? Because painting is on the 2-dimensional, those are the kinds of things that I think is the most amazing thing about painting. Like, I never differentiate between abstraction and figuration in a sense, because the way that a painting is made is with material on a flat surface with a brush and pigments taken from the earth or wherever, mixed with, you know, water with, I don't know, yogurt or whatever. And then it's magic, right? Like, so I've always been able to see those, even when to analyze when someone like Velasquez is painting a flower or a still life or a piece of material, or you can go up close and you can actually see the brushstroke, and that's,
And
so
they
to
just break
me,
down into this veil.
yeah. And like ascending number 2, I was probably looking a lot at Marston Hartley and his painting of curtains, and the sort of side, the way that curtains frame the outside, and so I think this is another way for me to paint still life in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's through it's curtains, but it's also abstract.
Yes.
Because it's lines and it's color and it's form and it's, so it's a way to get all those things that I love. I'm trying to get as much as I can into, those paintings, right? So it's a lot of things,
Well, they're
very, and I've always had that. So for me, abstraction is always tethered to the real world, and probably a lot of the abstract painters that I love are that way as well. Like that,
Who would you think of there as among your favorites?
I was thinking of Mondrian.
Yeah.
And and who else? So many. But I love the way that, I love a lot of his early work and the trees, painting of trees, when we get back to painting of trees. And you could see the progression of how we would come to where we would come to from the early work, right? So exactly. It's all there from the beginning, the line quality, the color quality. So, yeah. And that's that, he would name his paintings after streets and, so his abstraction, Rothko, another one, he, the way they approach abstraction is, I think, similar maybe in the sense that they're obviously looking at other artists and looking at, the world too, and interpreting it, right, into feelings and motion, things that they.
There's one more picture that I'd love for us to talk about, and it's one of the most mysterious pictures, I think, in the show, and that's Northward. Okay. Which is a painting of a bird flying in this kind of blaze of blues and pinks and greens. And it's a very, northward, there is this tradition, of course, of painting the North in Canada, which is a very male gendered tradition in this country, thanks to the enormous popularity of the Group of Seven and other men of their ilk. But you're coming into this Canadian painting tradition, of course, as a woman, and a full century after your foremothers broke the ice in the early decades of the 20th century. But can you tell us about Northward and how this hallucinatory painting came to be? It's small, but extremely powerful when you see it.
One of the things, I'm thinking of the female influences in terms of art making, and one of the things with this painting is I've been collecting pottery and particularly Scandinavian, and it's one of the places you can see so many talented women making contributions. Like I don't know, I love Ingrid Atterberg and Lisa Larson and all these amazing people that, recently I've been collecting Theo and Susan Harlander, right? And he used to make the pots and she'd do the images on them, and they're really quite whimsical and beautiful and free. And so this particular painting is actually, while I was at an antique market, buying like another piece, I saw this bird, which is basically a statue and a piece of pottery, and I don't know who it's by, but I thought I can paint that, and I have that's part of my vocabulary from the early years at Sabo Castelli, where you probably saw my paintings, where I was collecting figurines and painting them, right? So I felt that, here's a figurine I can paint again. And the thing about it is, it's all of that comes into play, because he is moving, but he's also stationary and stuck on a pedestal, you know. And there's a kind of a thing where in this painting, I remember I had done the background first and then had put the bird on top. And it's a way of finding meaning in doing an abstract painting and then finding the figure out of making the abstract painting. Like, it's a very convoluted way of grounding the painting, right? Because one of the things
I looked at it and I read it as a bird and its reflection, not knowing the story.
Well, that could be
double.
too. Yeah. See, that's probably actually a better reading. See, you know, my reasons and feelings for making a painting are just mine. It's not really the end all be all. But yeah, I could see that too.
It's wonderful.
Now that you say that.
Now that I know what it actually was, you know, to me, what's so fascinating about it is that it hovers between being a record of this figurine, and at the same time evoking the kind of beauty of a fleeting reflection over water, you know, like it kind of
it does both
between these two kinds of things that you're suggesting.
Yeah, and that's, you know, that's the thing I'm interested in, trying to learn those things from making paintings, and how it can be two things at once. How is that possible? You know, and I remember the first time that I saw a Matisse. I used to, when I was at school in Windsor University, we used to go over to Detroit to the DIA, and I was probably 20 or 21. Yeah. And I saw the Matisse, what's it called? I'm trying to remember the name of it. The painting. It's a table painting. And it was the first time, it's called The Window.
The Window.
Yeah. And it was the first time, it's a painting by a window, or a table by a window and a curtain. And the way that the table is painted is, it's the first time that something that is a brown brushstroke is also a table, but it's also abstract. So, and it's all those things together. Right? So how is that possible? How can color just be there for the sake of color, but also describe form, and also become a table, but also become a brown abstract painting on a table? And I think,
you know, what you're really describing is some of the pleasure of looking at your paintings, which is that you're in this kind of space where, you know, there is this kind of plasticity to, you know, it's not a conventional three-dimensional space ever. And you're often not sure if you're looking really at a decorative motif or a representation of something that we encounter in our daily life. You know, there's a kind of formlessness to space that is one of the real pleasures. It's what gives you that kind of, it's one of the constituent elements of that Gina Rorei euphoria that one feels kind of when you look at your pictures, is that floating feeling.
Well, when I think about, like,
beautiful color. Yeah.
Well, I think Matisse always said, like, when I paint green, it's not grass, and when I paint blue, it's not sky. And I always love that, because it's something that I don't know, I just really find just so beautiful, you know, that, and so generous, you know, to just think about painting as being, you know, more than just what you see. It's not what you see. It's more than that, right? So I think that's
what is it instead? If it's not what you see, it's what you
it's not necessarily feel, but it's what you feel. It's not what you think, it's what you feel. it's what you want to feel. It's what you aspire to feel, right? It's what you suffer. It's everything all together, right?
Yeah.
It's not, so I think that's probably my approach. It's not, it's more than, it's unreal, you know, it's more than what we see, what we actually see. It's unreal, right? So I think that's what I'm trying to do, but
A synthetic world of your own.
yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, look at Gina. I think you've given us so much to think about. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, you just carry on like this on top of your head.
It's so true.
Obviously, massive amounts of thinking and feeling has gone into these works, and it's such an honor to talk to you about them. And thank you again for being so generous with us.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate.
And everyone should hasten, wrapped in saran wrap and wearing a mask, down to Jane Corcoran Gallery to look at these beautiful pictures before they go.
And to the McMichael to see all the great paintings there. And
there's some It's
amazing. We're so lucky to have the McMichael in this city. I mean, it's amazing. We're lucky, and we have to be thankful for all the galleries, and especially during this time, right? Where
that was a good time to get out and about, because
and go see things again.
And these are just like these paintings of yours are just like plugging into a battery, a joy battery. So I think,
thank
you.
you.
This is the perfect moment for Gina Roy to
thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Be in our thoughts. So
thank you
again so much, and this was a real pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure for me. Thank you so much.